Bitcoin is pumping, but I'm a bit worried because although Bitcoin's broken through this key level of resistance, the US government is in shutdown. And this affects so many different areas of government, some of which we covered yesterday and some of which I'm going to cover today. And you might be wondering, how does a US government affect crypto? Well, all of those regulatory bodies in the US that control all the rules that get made are no longer at work. But more importantly than that, about 750,000 Americans that work for the government today are getting laid off. These people, they're getting given furlough. And that means they're not getting paid, which potentially means an additional 750,000 jobs will be lost in America. Which means that although this pump is happening right now, it could be pretty short-lived should this shutdown continue to get worse. I'd also like to point out the president in charge at the time the government last shut down in the USA was also Trump back in 2018. It's almost like there's a bit of a pattern. But even with all this going on, there is bullish news in the market right now with the Solana ETF facing approval odds of 100%. But the regulatory body that approves the ETF has been shut down, which could mean further delays to a Solana ETF. Despite this, Solana has been continuing to pump to the upside. So the question now is it worth firing in a long position, or do we just wait and open a short position when the time comes because it's probably going to get delayed again? Well, I'm going to explain that to you in this video, so drop a like, subscribe to the channel. We're going to figure out the entry and exit levels for the price of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana, as well as, of course, covering today's crypto and finance news. Leave a comment whether you're bullish or bearish in the comment section below, and without further ado, let's crack on. And starting out here with the current price of Bitcoin, yes, Bitcoin has had a breakout. Yes, it looks very bullish right now, but I'm concerned about the possibility of a return down to about $114,000. And should that happen, don't forget there is a massive CME gap down here at $110,000 on the price of Bitcoin that could act as a magnet should Bitcoin resume trading at $114,000. And this here is the most up-to-date Bitcoin liquidation heat map, of which we can see down here at 112 there is a significant amount of liquidity and there isn't a whole lot above. And my editor right now, he's begging me, put out bullish content, it'll get more views. And although I am bullish definitely long term, I'm talking about a short-term fluctuation in price until the US government resumes normal activity, because Bitcoin has proven this past few days it is not immune from these massive moves in just a short period of time, because 10% on Bitcoin is a very significant move. So given that information, what do we think about the current price of Bitcoin? And for that, let's get a bit of a long-term perspective on what's actually going on here. We can see that Bitcoin came down and retested the previous high of $108,000 and has since bounced to the upside. However, it is currently trading within a sideways range. That sideways range being from about here to about here. And so anything in between those two ranges is basically called no man's land. And in no man's land, pretty much anything can happen. And it's a range currently sitting about 10%. We could continue to bounce around in this range for the next year. We could continue to... basically, we need a break. And the break needs to be of 123 or below 109 to have any kind of significant move. And the concern being that we've got that liquidation around $112,000 that would ultimately trigger a pretty big sell-off, which could then cause a loss of the uptrend. And if Bitcoin loses the uptrend, then it's going to be pretty brutal and an extension of this bull market, because we're still in a bull market. Even if we were to get a drop down in price, we remain in a bull market. Because I'm not wildly bearish right now, but I'm looking at these short-term time frames here, like the 15 minutes, and we look at this and we go, okay, where can we plot a level of kind of a target for a retrace to on the 15-minute? Well, that's going to come in around $116,000, which is basically a retest of the outside of the level of resistance that we just broke through, turning it back into support. And speaking of no man's land, Solana finds itself in an incredibly similar position here, currently trading at 224. No man's land begins at 217 and it ends at 233. A break of 233, insanely bullish. It's going to go to the moon. It'll do $300. A break below 217 again. Well, that's going to yield a drop back down to $200,000 as we continue bouncing around in this range. I do have to say, though, I always favor the upside with Solana. I wouldn't take a long position on it here, but I am stacking spots at all prices. As soon as I make money, I put it all into Solana, because the Solana ETF will get approved inevitably, eventually, at some point this year. And when that happens, Solana will start making its ascent towards $1,000 and the real bull market can begin. But in other news today, BitGet executive says there's no logical reason for an altcoin season this cycle, and this is coming from somebody inside of one of the bigger exchanges. I actually think it's a pretty controversial thing to say. But then you've got to remember that BitGet just delisted 500 projects that they took a bunch of money off for listing fees and then just delisted them. BitGet as an exchange probably makes way more money off of Bitcoin volume than what they do off any other kind of asset. And when I see news stories stories like this one here from Injective, I get the feeling the market's getting bubbly, you know, guys. I don't get the most bullish feeling, because although this is bullish news that Injective debuts free IPO derivatives distancing from Robinhood private equity tokens, basically meaning that you can trade the value of OpenAI, a private company with no stock. You can basically trade the value of that, even though it has no perceived value, and the only value of this is completely synthetic and based on nothing. And that's why I say bubbly. These are the kind of things that you see towards the top of a cycle, unfortunately, even though it doesn't feel like the top of the cycle. And hopefully this stuff takes off, and hopefully it gets bubbly. But this is like one of the first warning shots that you see. However, if it was to take off, it'd be insanely bullish for the Injective token, and the project would go crazy. In other news, Abu Dhabi, now this one's crazy. Abu Dhabi agricultural regulator has banned the use of farmland for crypto mine. Now this is some Abu Dhabi farmland. What the hell are they farming? And now it's 2 hours later and I've changed clothes. I've just been to a Gate.io event in the middle of Singapore. To be fair, it's pretty good. And now I'm going out for dinner with the CEO. I'm like mildly bearish with a huge amount of bullish, because like I'm spot bullish. I'm 100% spot bullish. I think that buying the dip with spot is absolutely fine, because you're going to be correct at some point in the next couple of weeks. I'm just like mildly worried about the leverage bullish side of things. So let me know. What do you think? Comment section. Have a great day, everybody. See you in a bit. Drop a like and subscribe. Get them notifications on, and then you get notified when I post the videos. Goodbye.